Welcome to episode number 3 of the Men and Community podcast. On this very special episode, Matt and Carlo share their personal stories. Matt tells us how both being humble and being humbled can make an impact, and Carlo shares how you can help others reclaim their own value in the middle of a hard time. Thank you for joining our community.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 3 of the MAC podcast, Men and Community. My name is Matt. I'm here with Carlo. We're really excited to be joining you for episode 3 today. And thank you to those of you that have stuck around with us for 2 episodes, and maybe this is the third strike and we're out. Hard to say, but we're going to try to make today pretty compelling for you to stick around for episodes 4 and beyond. And in fact, we're just talking before we started recording here. Episode 4 is going to be a bonus mini episode, so a little gift to you after sticking with us for 3 episodes.
It's like episode 3.5 and a half.
3.5 and a half.
I said what I said.
Oh boy.
I said what I said.
I bailed out of being a math major and I still know that's wrong. Well, just like every other episode so far, all 2 of them, let's start with a little bit of an icebreaker, get ourselves warmed up here.
Yeah,
and
let's do it.
Since I'm already talking, I'll draw one of our fun cards here to start with. And we'll see where we get to. Ooh, what is the most scared you've ever been? Do you want to go first? Do you have something in mind?
I do, but I have to clarify the question a little bit. Are we talking about like an instantaneous moment of scared, like you're waking up from a nightmare scared, or is it has to be scared for something in real life?
I'd say you take that any way you like.
Okay. And this is an interesting one. I was probably like 15, 16, and I woke up from a nightmare where my little sister had a terrible accident. And I'm not going to talk about what the accident was because it was very graphic. But to this day, I remember that nightmare. And I woke up shivering in a cold sweat, absolutely terrified. Like I got out of bed, I ran over to my little sister's room and made sure she was there, right? Like checked to make sure that breath was still happening, all that kind of stuff. Like I was petrified. And I think it's one of the reasons that anytime I've ever gotten scared in real life, I've always kind of like used that as the litmus test. Like, am I more scared than that dream? Because that dream was heart-wrenching. Yeah. So, yeah, probably that.
Thank you for sharing that. Mine is a lot less scary, I think, or at least different kind of scary. And you've heard this story, but for those of you who live in North America, you're probably familiar with kind of the conventional haunted house thing around Halloween. You've got people that will be actors in these haunted houses, and they go out of their way to try to scare you. And I decided on a trip that I went to in Europe about 6 years ago that I thought it would be a good idea to go to one of what I thought was the same thing, but in Poland. And I guess, as it turns out, they don't have the same sort of restrictions that we do here in North America around, the actors not being able to touch people that are in these haunted houses. Anyway, long story short, one of my friends that I did the haunted house with ended up getting bitten on the shin by one of the actors in this room. And the minute that happened, the rest of that was a very, very frightening experience. I'm like, wow, if somebody can bite us here, what else could possibly happen? Mm-hmm. Definitely the most scared I've ever been.
Biting really does feel like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to a haunted house.
Yeah.
So you're right. What else? Where's that line? Because it's not obvious after you've been bitten.
That's right, because someone's for sure got like a bat or an axe or something. I'm like, what on earth is going to happen next?
Yeah. And for like liability reasons, they're not going to chop your arm off or anything like that. But if they bit you, there's this, okay, we're fine causing you some sort of harm.
That's right.
So where's the line for the harm?
And what does it say about a person who's willing to bite, and how do I trust their personal hygiene if they're willing to bite some strangers in the dark? Anyway, that's me. Would you like to choose a card now?
I would like to choose a card, yeah. I'm not going to take from the top of the deck. Would you rather be an American Idol judge or a Supreme Court justice? I feel like I know which way you'd go with this one.
This one's really, really hard one. I think life would be a whole lot easier if you were an American Idol judge.
Sure.
I think that there's something to be said for creating opportunities to create excitement and entertainment and just be a part of just a reality TV show would come with its whole set of things. But I think, one of our themes in this podcast has been about impact. I think for me, the impact is being a Supreme Court justice. I think it comes with much harder decisions. It comes with the pressure of knowing that your ethics and your morality is going to be on some level imposed on a greater society. But I think there's more potential impact there. So I'm going to go Supreme Court.
Yeah, and I think my answer would be very similar to yours. I think you would be more inclined to do the American Idol judge than I would be. That's just not my realm.
Yeah.
I enjoy watching it occasionally here and there. I know my family absolutely loves. I got a lot of vocalists in my family that love to sing. You and I,
Italian opera singers?
No, you and I, of course, in Costa Rica, we had our fair share of singing on the bus.
True.
Which we may talk about in our bonus episode.
Those wheels on the bus.
Yes, they go round and round. So yeah, that's less my. I don't find it as enjoyable as I think you would. But the Supreme Court, you're right. It comes with that heavy weight of you are impacting not only maybe a single person, but the precedence of justice moving forward based off of your decision and your morality, which is also kind of a scary thing to think about, because what if you have a morally ambiguous judge? That's a scary thought, which I'm sure corruption and all that kind of stuff is a thing that has happened or it does happen in the justice system. So yeah, I'm gonna say the judge, but not a career path on either direction that I think I would pick.
I want to spend a second and latch on to something you said, because I find it really interesting, the danger of having a morally ambiguous judge. I actually think, so long as it's one out of, we're Canadian, so we are super familiar with the U.S. Supreme Court. And for that matter, I'm not super familiar with the Canadian Supreme Court, but 1 out of 9 or whatever the case is, I actually think it would be really, really functional to have someone morally ambiguous, or a contrarian, if you want to think of it that way, sitting on the Supreme Court. I think that, because this is something that I value and I do a lot in my life, is providing that devil's advocate role to conversations. I think it would be valuable at a Supreme Court level to have those conversations about questioning the baseline assumptions, because yes, at some level there are some baseline thou shall not kill moral and ethical things that are fairly well accepted. However, when you get into the weeds on some of these things, especially as our societies evolve and develop, it merits a deeper conversation than just an assumption of this is what it is.
And I don't disagree with you, except my comeback to that is that being devil's advocate, is that truly being morally ambiguous? Because you can be the other side of the conversation and still understand right and wrong, however you see it. So I think you could have a judge for sure that says, well, hold on, let's look at the other side of this. I like you, will always broach that idea of, well, what if I'm wrong? What if this person's right? Right? What is the outcome of that? And I think that has a lot of value, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the opposing argument is morally wrong. Right? So I totally understand what you're saying. But I think that you can still make that argument. You could still have a judge that wants to be devil's advocate and wants to look at it from the other side. And, if you ever listen to any sort of true crime podcasts, you'll always hear lots of that. There's one in particular I'm thinking of that I can't remember the name of right now, where it's a group of people that are entirely looking at the opposite side of the argument from what was placed in evidence. It's an amazing podcast.
Just out here advertising other people's podcasts.
Hey.
Unbelievable.
Looking for affiliate deals. But I think it's important too, but it can still be done in a way that is lawful is not the right word, but morally correct, right? That's not out to specifically hurt one kind of person, right?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. All right, those were some neat little icebreakers.
Yeah, that went deep. I think my brain's turned on now. So
Good, because Matt texted me before I headed over here with some frustrations he was having, and he ended one of those text messages with just the little spicy pepper emoticon, and he says, "I'm in that kind of mood. I'm ready to throw down." So I want to hear what you have to say today. So what is our topic today,
well,
Matt?
We promised at the end of episode 2 that we would give the listeners, viewers, poor unfortunate souls an opportunity to get a little bit more insight into us as humans. Episode 1, we introduced ourselves as we exist today. We contextualized it very much, how we exist, how we are in that moment. But I think it's time to do the 30 years ago on, and just do the reversion and to kind of get a sense of how we've gotten here, what the journey's been like. So, what I'm imagining is we both take a turn on the hot seat, talk about as far back into your childhood as you care to go, and kind of lay out the journey and see where that takes us. And hopefully everybody who's joining us here can get to know us a little bit better, find a little bit that's a part of our journey that resonates with them, and hopefully that gives everybody a different way to connect with us. Because as we've talked about with communities form when we're able to find those points of similarity, those points of commonality. And so we hope that you're able to use this episode to connect with us on a little bit of a deeper level, and so that you can resonate with more of what we share moving forward.
Yeah, because it's always an interesting thing. I had a personal moment rather recently where I shared a little bit of vulnerability and a little bit of my story with someone, and he was able to find a lot of similarity in that. And that was, I hope, good for him and valuable for him, but at the same time, it was also valuable for me, because it was I know that the struggles in my life have prepared me to be of service for others in various levels of struggle. But to get that validation through something like that, where you're like, oh yeah, there is somebody that is struggling with something eerily similar. Yeah, I can be of service and I can help. That feels good, right? Because I think that's one of the point of going through struggle in life. And it's not to say that my entire story is struggle, and you'll hear more in a little bit, but it's always nice to get that frame of reference that when you come out the other side of certain things in life, you're like, oh, that had a purpose. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, why don't you start off then?
Sure. I can do that. So, of course, my name's Matt. I'm as of when we're filming this today, I'm 31 years old, and born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And shortly after I was born, I don't know the exact date, but I was, an infant or a toddler, something that I don't have recollection of. My parents split up, and my dad ended up moving to Vancouver. And so I grew up mostly with my mom, always have had a wonderful relationship with my dad, and it's been something that I've been very, very grateful for. And my dad has since remarried, and so I also have a very excellent relationship with my stepmom. And my family is something that has always been very, very near and dear to my heart. It's very much been my first and my primary community. In my maternal family, I have 10 younger cousins, and so we're all aged between 31 and the youngest, I believe, is 16. So we're all quite close in age, all things considered, and so we're very, very close, and very much a part of each other's social circles, and we'll hang out with each other outside of family dinners, and so they had a huge impact on me growing up for a number of reasons. One, being the oldest, I was always the primary babysitter or the ringleader or however you want to look at it. I was given responsibility and given blame for everything that happened, regardless of whether I was present or not. And it's something that really shaped me into being comfortable and seeking out leadership roles and leadership opportunities for myself. It's also something that inspired my work with kids. So when I was 12 years old, I remember in my final summer camp that I ever participated in as a kid, a couple weeks after that camp, I received a letter in the mail from the local YMCA offering me the opportunity to join their youth leadership program. And I didn't do it, But it planted this seed inside my head of, oh, like maybe I could do this. Maybe I could work with kids. And pretty cool, because that next summer I took an opportunity volunteering for a summer day camp here in Calgary. And that just catapulted me into this life I'm in now, where working with kids in recreation settings and sometimes in education settings is really front and center in my life. After I volunteered for 2 summers, I ended up getting hired by my local neighborhood recreation center, which is a 20-minute walk or a 10-minute bike ride, as long as I didn't fall off the bike, away from my house. And I worked there from the time I was 15 until I was 25. So it was a place that was another home for me, and that became another one of my communities very, very quickly. A few other pieces that I think are important to talk about, or at least to kind of get to know me. I did a ton of extracurriculars growing up. I played piano for 11 years. I was a part of scouting for a long time. Actually, the way that we met was through a mutual friend that I met in Scouts. Yeah. And so it's kind of a cool shout out to Chris and bringing us together. And so scouting was a really valuable community for me, not only for having a group of mostly men at that time, as it turned out, but also building a passion and love for the outdoors and nature, and being able to function well in adverse conditions outside. So that was something that I did a lot of. And then into my later in my youth, when I was 13, I started playing football. As we've talked about in previous episodes, and football became a huge part of my life, and I went on to play through high school and played a few years into university as well. And so, it's interesting for me, because professionally, I've always been in very female-centric industries, recreation being the first and foremost, education, and then fitness to a degree, a lesser degree, but still a degree, is very female-centric. And it's interesting, and I hadn't actually recognized this until saying it now, but a lot of the extracurricular communities that I've been a part of, especially through football and scouting, have been very male-oriented. So there's been that balance as I've grown up. So that's something that's really, really, really interesting to me. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of the main things that have had an influence on my story, and it's something that it's allowed me, and I think especially about my cousins, and I should say too that I have a number of cousins on my dad's side, and my stepmom's family has an equally big number of grandchildren, so a number of cousins through marriage on my stepmom's side as well. And so it's that has been hugely, hugely formative for me, just in terms of valuing community, understanding how I've been raised in that regard, and family just means so much to me, and the reason why I'm so passionate about community now. Is there anything that you think that I missed that you would ask me to touch on?
No. One question that I did want to ask you, just because it might broaden the conversation a little bit, is if you had to pick one story from any point in your life that you think either shaped you significantly, or is something that you think about often enough that it is still a big part of your life, what would that story be?
Two stories that are opposite sides of the same coin that I feel really strongly about, and they're both an impact that I've had on a single person, different people in these stories, but they have, I think about them almost daily, and how I have the potential to influence and impact other people. When I was working in summer camps, I think I was 17 or 18 years old at this point, and I was a supervisor of camps, but a young supervisor, and in my role, part of my role was supporting kids who are experiencing some really challenging behaviors. So if they weren't able to participate as a part of their group, I would get called in to support. And this one, I'll never forget his face. This one kiddo was just having a really tough day, and he was playing on one of those hydraulic forklifts that would be used in industrial settings, And I had asked him to get off. I was worried that he would hurt himself, right? And so I'd asked him to stop playing on it. I had asked him to get off. I'd asked him if we could go and do something else somewhere more fun, playground, gymnasium, whatever it was. I just wanted him away from this industrial equipment. And he wouldn't listen, and he wouldn't listen. And this is after a full week of that type of interaction between him and I was just really struggling to build a rapport. And so finally I snapped, and part of me just wanted to be proved right so this kid would understand that I know what I'm talking about and that he could get hurt in this. And so I grabbed the handle of the forklift that he was playing on, and I just gave it a tug, and the kid fell. And wasn't seriously hurt or anything like that, just kind of stumbled, fell to the ground. But I'll never forget when he looked at me with this face of betrayal, that I had completely betrayed his trust, that somebody who he expected to be somebody safe, who he expected to be somebody that he could trust, had just completely betrayed him. And that was absolutely a devastating feeling, and just made me realize how in that quick instant, how fast you can make an impact on somebody.
Yep.
And then, a little bit of a warmer story on the flip side. I had another kid years later come to the same program, same camps, and just moved to Calgary with his younger brother and their family. And he was really interested in sports. Really, really tall kid for his age. You could tell that he was going to be like probably 6'3", 6'4". Massive kid for 12 years old. And I was telling him that, hey, you should try out for football. And he seemed kind of shy, interested, but really shy. And so I did my research. I looked up the football team, the community team that he should try out for. And the tryouts happened to be the next week. And so I got him all set up. And he went to the first practice, and he came back to camp the next day with this like really sad, dejected look on his face. And I go, what was it? What happened? Well, they told me I wouldn't be able to participate again tonight if I didn't have cleats. And like right now, my family just doesn't have the ability to go out and buy me a pair of cleats, especially if I'm not sure if I'm going to make the team. So I'm like, at this point, I've been playing football for 6 years. I immediately, like on the spot, drove home, picked up an old pair of cleats, brought them back, and I gave them to him.
Oh.
And I said, here is this pair of shoes. I don't need them back. You take them, you wear them. If they're able to last you for a week, a month, 2 years, don't care, have them. And he went on to play football for a long time. He went on to play football past high school, and so did his little brother. His little brother actually played junior football for a number of years. And I remember running into their mom at the grocery store one time, and she jokingly but very sincerely said, thank you for bringing football and this lifestyle and this community into our family. It's meant so much to our family relocating to a new city.
That's an amazing story. I don't think you've ever told me that one. And like you said, it's one moment or one small gesture, because you were never going to wear those cleats again.
No.
Right? You were never going to have a yard sale and sell them for any more than $10, $15, $20. They were never going to make an impact in your life again, but they could make a massive impact in someone else's life.
Yeah.
And I think that is amazing. That's a very cool story. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, quick moments. And there's 2 moments that I sit with a lot, just to remind myself constantly how these tiny interactions, even if it's a smile to the person driving in the lane next to you, right? Like these little things that you have absolutely no idea what they're going to impact and how they're going to land with somebody else.
Yeah, the smile's a really big one, because even yesterday I had a moment, just went shopping and just was in a good mood, and decided that anybody that looked at me, because the Canadian smile. For those watching, if you don't know the Canadian smile, it's like it's just you don't even show your teeth. You just...
And the corner of his lips curled ever so slightly, revealing very handsome dimples.
Yes, that's the Canadian smile. I decided yesterday was not a day for Canadian smiles, because we're filming this shortly after Christmas in 2022. So it was a day for full-on grin, teeth-showing smiles. And I gave them to maybe 3 or 4 people. And the responses are always mixed. but they're all mixed, leaning towards good. You get the people that smile bright and big, knit back to you. You get the people that will smile and then start a conversation. You get the people that will give you the Canadian smile. And then you get the people that look up, smile, and then kind of shy away a little bit, but still with a little bit of a smile on their face. And it's just that small little act. And I think if you are a kind of person that believes in making a positive impact on people, but you don't think you would ever do it in a way like Matt and I are, or, you know, in some grander gesture, making an impact on someone can be done as simply as a little smile, a little hello, you know, how are you to the person in the drive-thru.
Yeah.
Like, it makes such a big difference. So,
and I think in a future episode, he's going to be so mad that I'm bringing him up. But in a future episode, I think one of the guests that we should try to feature on our podcast is our dear friend Terry.
Oh, okay.
For all of his wonderful idiosyncrasies, I can say that word because I'm sure he won't know what it means. He's taught me the most about what it means to do those little gestures to do something to make someone's day. So maybe we'll have him on in the future.
I think that would be a wonderfully terrible idea for many reasons.
Yeah, so buckle up. That'll be the next episode, 7.86 and a third bonus episode.
That'll probably be an episode. When editing these videos and these episodes, I try not to make cuts once we've started to when we finish. I want it to be a very natural flowing conversation. That would be an episode where we make cuts.
Or you just need some sort of like a bleep button.
I'll have to learn how to add bleeps, I guess.
The dream.
The dream.
So why don't you jump in next? Tell us
Sure.
Tell us about your story, and yeah, I'm sure you'll find the same. It's tough to find a way to touch on enough depth in this platform to make it meaningful.
I'm going to preface my story with the idea of saying that one of the reasons community is so important to me is that I didn't have a lot of it for a very large portion of my life. I always had familial community. I come from an Italian family, so as you would imagine, that means lots of family, lots of get-togethers. I still, to this day, I work very closely with both of my parents. My sister and I have a close entrepreneurial partnership. We get together at least once every 2 weeks for a family dinner that lasts 5, 6, 7 hours. So we are very close, but beyond that, my community was very small growing up. And as a kid, I was quite overweight. I was overweight for a lot of my life, and that led to a lot of pretty severe bullying as a kid. I was also a much larger in stature kid. So, in grade 3 or 4, I was getting beaten up by grade 5 and 6s, which was always an interesting story. When they found out they were beating up a kid 3 years their junior, they were not very happy to hear such a thing. I didn't really start to make much for friends until I joined wrestling in junior high school. And then I feel like from that point, the friendship area started to change. I developed a lot of really close relationships with my friends. Some of these friends that I made in high school, I still have to this day. And as much as we don't see each other or converse as closely as we used to, because of course, as you grow older, everybody finds their niches and they start to find the areas of passion that they want to follow. And my areas are very different from, I feel, a lot of those friends, which is fine. We were getting together over the holiday season. We still have lots of fun when we spend time together. But I feel that my story doesn't really begin until my early 20s. And I'll follow that with saying my life doesn't begin until my late 20s. So let me explain. In my early 20s, I met a lovely young lady and, kind of instantly fell for her. And it wasn't very long before we lived together and spent, every waking moment together. And unfortunately, she struggled with some health issues. And it was very difficult for her to find purpose in life. It was very difficult for her to find a balance between the struggles that she had on a day-to-day basis and trying to live what many would argue to be a happy life. So because of how I felt about her, I really devoted a lot of myself to trying to make her life better. In kind of every way. And the unfortunate thing is that sometimes when people enter relationships that aren't necessarily good for them, they start to abandon the things in their life that made them kind of who they were, right? So that's exactly what I did. I gave up a lot of the things that I found joy in, and I just kind of lived my life to maintain the status quo and to try and provide as good of a lifestyle to both of us as I could. And as time went by, I continued to sacrifice those things that made me me. And this is why I talk about the idea of not really having a lot of community. One thing that I heard after this entire scenario wrapped up was that a friend of mine said, well, like a friend that I had recently reconnected with, she said, I used to ask about you and how you were doing to our other friends. And our friends would say, well, we don't really know. If we ask Carlo, he says he's good, but you can tell he isn't. And by no fault of my friends, because not everybody knows that sometimes there needs to be some more probing questions, right? If you're asking your friend, how are you doing? And they give you a face answer and you know it's not true, ask more questions. Ask more questions, guys. It's so important because it's hard to admit when your life isn't going the way you want it to. And it's hard to admit to your closest friends that you're unhappy. So sometimes you need that knight in shining armor to really ask you, right? And one of the biggest sacrifices I think I made was my friendship with you. There was a lot of time that we didn't see each other, like 5 years that went by, maybe a little bit longer. So kind of as we got to the head of this, things just continued to get worse and worse. And even the little shining rays of hope weren't enough to really change the path of everything. And then that relationship came to an end. And there was no real distinct moment where I made a decision to change my life. But there was almost like, there was this moment where it was like the weight that was there occupying all of my energy was now gone. And all of the things that I loved in life before came back.
There was space for them again.
There was space. There was energy for them again. And I talk about this a fair bit. You have a very finite amount of energy to commit to things. And if that energy is given away to other people, you don't have any of that energy to keep for yourself and your own well-being, right? So all of a sudden that energy was available again. I stepped back into all of the amazing things that I wanted in my life. My physical fitness, my familial life, my friends' life, my community just continued to expand. I started learning new skills. And I really settled into this idea of who I wanted to be. And part of that was becoming a person that would create an impact, right? And that is something that has continued to develop over time. And it's something that I'm really proud of to this day to say that I and will always be working on, but something that I'm really happy that I have started to work on. So that was kind of the point where my life, I would say, began. And it's been an amazing ride ever since. And I think that this podcast has been just kind of the next logical step in becoming that person that I feel I want to be.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love that you're so willing to be open and vulnerable with that piece of the story. I think that every single one of us, whether it's you and I, those of you sharing this with us, can appreciate that there's different sides to a story. There's different pieces there. And certainly there's things that you sharing inspires me to share more of, and maybe we'll get into more of those in future episodes. And I think the big things that I take away from hearing that and hearing you share all that is the importance and the value and how therapeutic it can be to find a place where you feel safe enough to share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's exactly it, because there was nobody in my life that I felt comfortable enough sharing with. Like, I remember shortly after the relationship ended, you and I went for the first coffee, drink, dinner, I can't remember what it even was, that we had gone for in a very long time. And I spilled my guts to you about everything. And it was the first time that I think I had said so many of the things that I was thinking and so many of the things that I had gone through. Because up until that point, I just didn't want to and didn't feel like I could share any of that with anyone. And that's a really tough place to be. Like, even if you aren't the kind of person to articulate your hardships, right? Because not everybody is. It's still nice to know that you can. So when you don't feel like you can, when you feel like, I am talking in a way to people that I feel should warrant them trying, this is me asking for help in a way that I'm really only comfortable doing in small ways, and nobody grabs your hand.
Yeah.
You don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because the hardest part about someone, and this doesn't have to be for relationships, it can be for anybody in a position where they're not doing well. The hardest part of trying to be somebody helping someone through that is providing assistance without telling someone what to do. Right? Because, you try to tell somebody who's suffering from anything. Imagine trying to tell someone who smokes to stop smoking. How is that normally met? With a massive amount of resistance.
Yeah.
Right? That person knows that smoking is generally not good for their health. Maybe it's already started to affect them. They know that it costs them money on a monthly basis. Whatever, thing that they know all of that already. They don't need you to tell them that they should stop smoking. What they need is for you to help them realize their worth is great enough that they should be taking care of themselves. That's the number one thing. I had a conversation with someone, I'm not going to reveal who, but I had a conversation with someone where she was concerned about a female friend of ours in a relationship that this person didn't feel was serving that young lady anymore. And she says, I tell her all the time she needs to leave this guy. And I looked at her dead in the face and I said, how dare you? I said, it is not your place to ever tell somebody that they should end a relationship, barring that person not being beaten. Like, if somebody's being abused, sure, that's a different story. But you should never tell somebody how much of a person they are seeing is a loser, how much the person they are seeing is bad for them, all those kind of things. Because now you're just putting down somebody that this person loves or cares for. And that does not help them either.
Yeah.
But what you can do is you can help a person realize their own worth and how their worth and their light is being diminished a little bit more by somebody who's not playing on the same level as them. And that's not always that other person's fault either. But never, ever attack somebody for the poor decisions they've made. Just help them realize how much you care about them and how much they are worth to you. And maybe that'll be the thing that allows them to take control of themselves again.
And for your own self-protection, I guess, I learned not that long ago that, as you're saying, providing unsolicited advice is usually met on deaf ears.
Yeah.
Right? And it's something where you can have the best of intentions. You can frankly have the answer.
Yeah.
Maybe you do have the answer. But until somebody is in a position where they are ready to receive it. And ready to receive it looks different ways, but one of the things that it most often resembles is someone asking for help. And so until you've been asked for that advice, you've been asked to provide wisdom, suggestions, ideas, solutions, they typically won't go anywhere. And even if somebody's ready to hear them, it doesn't always mean they're ready to implement them either. And so, you know, what I've learned is the best thing that you can do is wait to be asked. And then when you are asked, be prepared to share it a few more times. You know, I've had friends that I'll share something with them, and then 6 months later, they'll come to me like, you know what? I had a great idea. And it was a thing that I told them 6 months ago. I'm like, great, tell me more.
Yeah.
And those things will happen. And the other beautiful thing that you mentioned that I really want to dive in on too is the importance of asking questions.
Yeah.
I think far too often when we're prescribing or we're telling someone this is what you need to do, every time we do that, it's packed full of assumptions. It's packed full of assumptions. We're layering on our biases, our assumption that we understand enough of the context of a situation, where in reality, I only know as much as you've shared with me. I don't know if that's the complete story, and I don't even know if it is the complete. That's your perspective of a story.
What's the actual truth of the story?
The best way that you can go about it, which is something that you talked about, is to ask questions. Yeah. Because the minute that you're asking questions, you're removing a lot of your own biases, your own assumptions, and you're putting yourself in a position to learn and understand, but also giving the person you're asking that opportunity to learn and understand, because they're thinking about their situation in the context of the questions that you've asked and no longer within the confines of the story that they've prepared to tell you.
Yeah. Well, and then further to that, if somebody is coming to you and they're sharing a struggle, or even further than that, they are asking for your opinion, it is because that person looks at you as someone who in their eye is better equipped to handle that situation. Right? So one of my favorite things to do when somebody comes to me with something like that is I answer it under the guise of, if this was me, this would be how I would handle it.
Right.
And there's two reasons for that. Is one, it makes sure that person understands that you aren't trying to force your ideology on them. Even if they've asked for your opinion, they're not asking for a game plan.
Yep.
They're asking for your opinion. And two, if they truly look at you as someone who is better equipped for that scenario, they're going to say, well, if this is the way Carlo would handle it, maybe I need to find a way similar to that within my own comfort zone that would allow me to also handle that solution or that opportunity. So, you know, to me, there's so many different ways to handle helping someone through a hardship. But what I will say as my kind of final thing on this story is that if you are struggling with something like this, and you don't know how to ask for help, or you feel like you're asking for help and you're not getting it the way you feel you need it, don't give up. Don't give up continuing to talk with people, because the moment that you do, the situation will never get better. But as long as you continue talking to people and you continue asking for help, there will be that one moment, that one comment, that one situation that reveals a little bit of light to you. Yeah. And it'll help make things better, whether it be better in a massive way or better in a little way. Because when you're struggling with something, that little bit of better, as minute as it may be, can feel like the clouds have parted.
Yeah.
And it makes the rest of the challenge, the rest of the journey so much easier.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I love that. And I get the sense we're maybe starting to starting to wind down this episode here, and hearing that, actually, I had an idea that I wanted to share. In those of you that are involved in community development, you may be familiar with the idea of asset mapping. Have you heard of asset mapping?
Explain it to me.
So the idea is that if you're doing any sort of community development work, however you're defining the community, you want to approach it from a strength-based perspective, meaning that you go through an exercise called asset mapping, which is essentially to say what strengths, what resources, what assets already exist within my community that are going to promote a certain goal that I have. So for example, in my line of work, it's looking at healthy eating and active living. Okay, great. So for asset mapping, let's look at how many grocery stores, how many community gardens, how many community centers that provide programming for children and youth. These sorts of things contribute to an asset map that helps us then understand how to move forward. And as you were sharing about how important it is to hang on, continue speaking to someone, I thought to myself, there's no reason why all of us, whether we're going through challenges, hardships, or not, in this moment, wouldn't find value in developing that asset map for ourselves on a personal level. Mm-hmm. Understanding who those people are that are important to us, who are those people that we know we can go to share something challenging in a safe space. Who are those people that I can call and spend time with that just put a smile on my face? Yeah. Not always the same people. Where are those places that I can go where I can rejuvenate myself, where I can feel calm and safe? Yeah. Who is it? Where can I go? And what do I need to be doing? For us, it's usually fitness related, yeah. Right? Have I gotten outside, gotten that fresh air? I think that if you take that inventory, that asset map of the things in your life that help you feel well, that allows you to have something to anchor you, to pull you back when you're experiencing something like that.
Well, and I love that too, because it's a very active way of looking at hardship, right? Because, we can all go through something hard and go, well, I need to feel better. I can't be, because we all know we can't sit in a negative attitude for too long, right?
That's right.
So I know I need to feel better. But if you haven't done that legwork, you don't know where to turn. And therefore, many people will either not pull themselves out of a funk, or they'll turn to, something that is maybe looked at not as a good outlet. Yeah. Okay? But if you've done the legwork, can you imagine how much easier it would be to make yourself happier if you knew exactly where you needed to go and who you needed to be with? Right? In my line of work, we call it the flat tire 5. At 5 a.m, who are the 5 people you would call if you had a flat tire on the highway? Those are the people that that they will always come and, take you home, help you change the tire.
Who's going to show up?
Who's going to always show up for you regardless of the time, the weather outside, etc. Do the legwork, figure that out, and make a community around those people. Because I can guarantee you, if you feel that way about them, they probably feel that way about you. Right?
And I think that it's important that they know. It's important that you take the time to tell them.
Yes.
That they are that person for you.
Yeah, because you and I have no question that if there's something going on in either of our lives, that we could call each other at any point in time and talk through it. And that is invaluable. Yeah. Right? There's so many things that we talk through, big or small, that are important to us, that we, I know that there are certain things I wouldn't talk to anybody else about besides you. Right? So, okay, so I think that is a good logical conclusion for the end of our episode. As we have made it our habit to this point, let's finish up with something that we both appreciate about each other.
Yeah,
because I feel like that's become an important part of these episodes.
I love that.
So I'm going to start with you. You shared a little bit of a story with me about coming back from our recent trip to Costa Rica and kind of being hit with a very large workload. And, some sacrifices that you had to make over the last little bit to bring yourself to a level of being comfortable with that load and all of your other commitments over the holidays. And, we live in this world kind of right now where there's two sides of a coin when it comes to work-life balance. There's the very traditional work until you drop, and the only thing that is important in your life is your work. And you have the quiet quitting, work is something I do from this point to this point, no sense of responsibility. My personal health in my life is the most important. And what you have found and what you articulated to me was a wonderful little balance between the two, because you and I both care very much about our careers. And more importantly, we care about our careers because they make an impact, and we care about the people that we work with. So I think that either side of those coins would cause detriment to a group of people that we care about. But by finding that balance, you manage to, not put a massive strain on your work team, and to also not sacrifice the people in your personal life. And I think that that's something that takes a lot of internal strength to really push yourself to do. So I'm proud of you for doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
One thing that I appreciate about you all the time, but I'm feeling very grateful for again in this moment, is just how confidently you can share stories that make you feel vulnerable. And I know that the story that you shared today is something that you continue to work through years later and in your own personal way. And you being prepared to practice being vulnerable helps inspire me to become more comfortable doing the same. And I'm feeling in this moment that there are a lot of things that I didn't share today that I almost wonder if we had flipped the episode and if you had gone first, if I would have been inspired to share a little bit differently or share a little bit more. And maybe those things will come up in other episodes. But your ability to do it, not just for you, but to use it in a selfless way for others. I've watched several occasions that I can think of right now, let alone the others, where you've taken what you've experienced thanks to your ability to be vulnerable, and you've been able to help support others that are going through similar experiences. And so I'm really grateful that you're able to show up like that for me and for everyone else.
Thank you. Thank you.
So with that, let's bring this episode to a close. We just want to again say thank you for being here with us. We hope that you found something that you can connect with one or both of us on a little bit deeper of a level. We also wanted to share that we have our social media channels, different ways and avenues that you can connect with us on. And so whether you are on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, you can find us at Men and Community, all spelled out, all one word, no punctuation, no symbols, none of those sort of
We're
things.
simple like that.
Very, very simple.
Yeah.
So at Men and Community on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And we hope that you take the time to reach out and connect with us. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and that can be in whatever fashion you guys want. If you just want to throw out a comment or hopefully constructive criticism of an episode, we will love to hear that. But at the same time, further to what I said today, if you are struggling with something and you want somebody to talk to that's outside of the situation, I'm sure Matt would agree with me. We're both happy to be there for you in whatever way that we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So other than that, guys, thank you so much for joining us for episode 3. We can't wait to hear from you. We can't wait to have you on further episodes. Anything else you want to say?
No, I can't wait to have you join us for episode 3.5 and a half.
Yes. Bye, guys.